I handed them a gift they couldn't return, couldn't deny, and couldn't bury. A folder, a signature, a truth, notarized and final. And in that moment, without yelling, without crying, the entire performance collapsed. Not with noise, but with silence. Chosen. Have you ever lived in a house where love was measured by how much glitter your sister got? Where your worth was wrapped in a plain envelope, while someone else unwrapped a key to a legacy? This is the story of Aubrey Keller, the daughter who was always expected to need less, ask for nothing, and figure it out alone. Until the day she found the truth behind a cracked office door, and quietly took back everything they'd hidden, not out of revenge, but to reclaim what was always hers. This isn't just a family drama, it's a reckoning. It's about identity, dignity, and the kind of silence that doesn't mean surrender, it means power. Because sometimes the loudest thing you'll ever say is the moment you stop asking to be seen. Christmas morning in the Keller household always arrived like a Broadway production, perfectly staged, endlessly rehearsed, and utterly exhausting. The cabin in Colorado was wrapped in snow and pine-scented stillness. From the outside, it looked like a winter postcard. Chimney smoke curling into the pale sky, wreaths hung with red ribbon, twinkle lights blinking softly around frosted windows. But inside, it was a different world. Inside, every motion had meaning, every smile had sharp corners. Elaine Keller, the family matriarch, descended the staircase in her signature crimson robe, a satin sash tied neatly at her waist like a bow on a gift she'd wrapped herself. Her hair, sprayed into submission, caught the morning light. Her voice, sing-song sweet, echoed through the vaulted ceiling. "Who's ready for cinnamon buns and champagne?" "Always," Madison called from the couch, her legs tucked under her cashmere throw. Her makeup was already perfect, even at 8 in the morning. Of course it was. She beamed as Robert Keller, their father, emerged from the den with his usual black coffee and a newspaper tucked under one arm. He looked like a man auditioning for the role of all-American dad, all flannel and stoic silence. I stood near the window, letting the cold draft brush my face, the only real thing in the room. The Christmas tree sparkled behind me, 9 feet tall, trimmed in gold and white ornaments, most of which Madison had hand-selected last month during their girls' trip to New York. Elaine had called it a bonding moment. I hadn't been invited. The tree blinked steadily in the corner, casting soft shadows on the polished floor. Beneath it, the presents were stacked with surgical precision. My name was there, on a few packages, neat cursive, just enough to be visible, not enough to be meaningful. Elaine clapped her hands. "Time for gifts. Robert, you start." He handed Madison a rectangular box wrapped in silver paper. She gasped before she even touched it. That was her signature move, reacting before reality could disappoint her. She unwrapped it slowly, dramatically, like she was unveiling a masterpiece. Inside was a single key nestled in velvet. Her breath hitched. Is this for the Aspen house?" Elaine beamed. "It's yours, sweetheart," Robert added. "We figured you needed your own space, somewhere inspiring to build your brand." Madison squealed, throwing her arms around them. Champagne was poured. Toasts were made. I smiled, tight, muscle memory, and turned back toward the window. When I turned back around, Robert approached me with a plain envelope. No wrapping, no bow, no flourish. "Here you go, Aubrey," he said, like he was handing me a receipt. I took it with both hands. It was thin, weightless. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because deep down, I already knew. Whatever was inside was never meant to shine. It wasn't meant to matter. Not in a room where glitter and grandeur were the currency of love. Madison laughed in the background, still twirling her new key between manicured fingers. Elaine wiped a tear and said something about granite countertops. And me? I held that envelope like a mirror. And what I saw wasn't disappointment, it was confirmation. That in this family, sparkle was everything, and silence was survival. But not for long. I remember standing there watching Madison hold that key up to the light as if it were made of diamonds instead of debt and favoritism. Elaine dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin, murmuring about open-concept living spaces and natural light. Robert said something about property values doubling in Aspen. The 3 of them were already planning renovations before Madison had even thanked them. My envelope rested on my lap, untouched. No card, no note. Just my name scribbled in Elaine's looping cursive, perfected over decades of writing PTA flyers and holiday tags. My fingers hovered over the flap, but I didn't open it. Because I didn't need to read it to understand it. I could feel it, the same way you feel a bruise before you press it. This wasn't a gift. It was a message, a reminder, a declaration that I was not Madison. I never had been. It took me back to every birthday I spent alone at the kitchen table, every dance recital I didn't attend because no one thought to tell me about it, every achievement I minimized before they could. Madison was still talking, now describing her plans to convert the guest room into a podcast studio. Elaine gasped in delight. "Oh, honey, that's so forward-thinking." Robert nodded. "You're building an empire." I smiled again, my third fake one of the morning. I slid the envelope under my thigh, not to hide it, just to end it. The paper made a whispering sound against my jeans, like even it was embarrassed. No one noticed, no one asked, they never did. And that, more than anything else, was the gift I received that Christmas: clarity. Not the kind wrapped in bows or sealed with wax, the kind that settles deep in your bones and starts to change you, quietly, completely, forever. Later that evening, while Madison FaceTimed her influencer friends from the front porch, showing off the snow-covered view of what was now her Aspen retreat, I sat by the fireplace and finally opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of printer paper. No letter, no message, just a job posting clipped from a local insurance company. Administrative assistant, entry level, hourly. And in Robert's unmistakable handwriting, "Thought this might be more your speed." That was it. Not a question, not a suggestion, an assignment, like all the others before it. I folded the paper back into the envelope, twice, then once more, until it was barely thick enough to feel. Madison laughed from the porch. Elaine was humming in the kitchen. Robert sat by the fire, flipping pages in his newspaper. And I sat in the same room, but not truly there, not anymore. You don't grow up in a house like mine without learning how to disappear politely. I was 9 the first time I made my own birthday cake. Chocolate, too much oil, not enough sugar. I remember Elaine watching from the other room, brushing Madison's hair while humming along to some Broadway soundtrack. Madison had ballet that afternoon and didn't want the kitchen to smell weird, so Elaine cracked the window and told me to keep it down. There were no balloons, no card, no candles, just me and the smell of something burnt clinging to the edges of celebration. That same year, Madison had a backyard birthday bash with ponies and a magician who wore a glitter cape. The neighbors came, even the ones who usually crossed the street to avoid us. Her presence glittered under a rented tent. Elaine wore heels to the party. I handed out cupcakes I hadn't baked. By middle school, I stopped hoping, stopped waiting for someone to clap. When I made honor roll 3 semesters in a row, I slipped the certificate into my desk drawer like it was contraband. When I placed first at the regional science fair for a working hydroelectric dam model, Robert showed up late and left before the awards. He said he had a golf tee time with someone important. But when Madison booked a 30-second shampoo commercial in high school, Elaine hosted a catered dinner party and displayed the product packaging in a glass frame above the fireplace. Senior year, academic honors night. My name was called, top of the class, full scholarship. I stepped onto that stage feeling, just for a second, like maybe this time would be different. Elaine was in the front row, scrolling through her phone. When I stepped down, she looked up and said, loud enough for the parents nearby to hear, "Well, at least she's good at something." That sentence cut sharper than silence, sharper than absence, because it wasn't indifference. It was contempt dressed as a compliment. That was the moment I stopped wondering if I was imagining it. The favoritism, the hollow praise, the applause saved for someone else. Favoritism doesn't whisper, it carves. It carves itself into birthdays, graduations, and Christmas mornings, until you stop expecting love to sound like love at all, and start bracing for its absence like a storm that always comes right on time. It wasn't guilt that brought me back home that weekend. It was duty, cloaked in a voice that knew exactly how to thread the needle between expectation and manipulation. Elaine had called twice in 1 week. That alone was a red flag. She used words like "your father," "hurt his back," and "can't lift the storage bins without help." The message wasn't in what she said, it was in what she didn't say. So I said yes. I drove 4 hours through the winding Colorado roads, past ice-draped trees and frozen lakes, parked in the same driveway Robert still edged with ruler-straight hedges, and stepped into the house that smelled like lemon polish, overcooked meat, and the faint burn of something no one ever acknowledged. Madison wasn't there. "She's busy," Elaine sighed, as if her absence was somehow my fault. I nodded, set my bag down, and said all the right things. By Saturday evening, the checklist was done. Bins moved, attic sorted, drawers reorganized. Robert talked more about lake house renovations than he did about his own recovery. At dinner, the conversation looped back to Madison's new business venture, a podcast on conscious branding. I ate my chicken and smiled like I was listening. That night, I couldn't sleep. The guest room, formerly mine, still held my old soccer trophies, but the walls felt smaller, tighter, like they remembered every word I'd swallowed growing up. I wandered the hallway barefoot. The house creaked under its own secrets. And then I saw it. Robert's office door, ajar. That was strange. He guarded that room like it was sacred. Passwords, locks, codes. I should have walked away, but I didn't. Inside, the air was still, cold. Files were stacked neatly. The safe, small and steel gray, sat behind the filing cabinet, its door slightly open. I don't remember deciding to kneel. I only remember the weight in my chest as I reached in. Rows of manila folders, each labeled in Robert's tight script. Taxes, deeds, trusts, and one envelope, different from the rest, white, sealed. To be opened upon death. My hands went still. I opened it. Inside was a new will, not the one they paraded at dinner when Madison turned 21. This one was silent, quietly damning. My name came first. Next to it, a parcel number, a property, one I'd never heard of, and then a deed, filed under my name, except I hadn't signed it. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, almost, but the R in Keller curled wrong. The slope of the A was off. Someone had signed for me, and it wasn't the only time. Bank documents, transfers, a trust account. Every page told the same story. My identity moved like furniture in a house I wasn't invited into, not forgotten, used. That night I sat under the buzz of Robert's desk lamp, paper after paper in my lap. The truth wasn't loud. It didn't explode. It landed soft, certain, and irreversible. I didn't scream. I didn't slam any doors. That wasn't my style, not anymore. Instead, I did what the forgotten ones always learn to do best. I observed. I gathered. I moved in silence. After I left my parents' house that Sunday, I drove straight back to Denver, hands gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. The papers I'd found, copies of the forged deed, the trust account under my name, the will, sat in a file folder on the passenger seat. They felt heavier than they looked, like they carried years of overlooked moments and things never said. By Monday morning, I reached out to someone I trusted, Jamie Lynn, a law school friend who now worked in estate and property law. We hadn't talked in months, but she picked up on the second ring. "You sound like someone who just discovered a dead relative left them a haunted mansion," she joked. "Not haunted," I replied. "Stolen." She stopped laughing. I emailed her the documents that afternoon. That evening, she called me back, her voice no longer joking. "Aubrey," she said carefully, "this isn't just unethical. This is illegal. If you want to go after them—" "I don't," I interrupted. "I want to own something they didn't want me to have." There was a pause, and then, "Okay, then we do this smart." Over the next several weeks, Jamie helped me build something that wasn't just legal, it was invisible. We formed a shell LLC, registered out of state, no ties to the Keller name. Through a holding company, we began the process of acquiring the very property listed in the forged documents, the lake house. As it turned out, the house had been mortgaged quietly, likely to fund Madison's now-defunct skincare line. The payments had stopped. The bank had flagged it for auction. My parents never mentioned it, not in passing, not in crisis. They had wrapped the silence so tightly around that house, they must have thought it would never unravel. They were wrong. Through a proxy buyer, we submitted an anonymous bid. No negotiations, full price, clean and final. When the transaction closed, I held the official deed in my hands. This time, the signature at the bottom was mine, authentic, sharp, deliberate. I stared at the paper for a long time. It wasn't just property, it was history. It was everything they'd tried to hide under layers of shame and control. And now, it was mine. Not because they gave it, but because I claimed it. Not as the quiet daughter who always swallowed her voice, but as the woman who finally used it, on paper, in ink, and with precision. I didn't tell them, not yet, because some victories don't need applause, they just need a moment. And that moment was coming. Christmas came again, like it always did, predictable and sharp-edged. Same wreath on the front door, same cinnamon buns burning slightly at the edges, same careful choreography of fake joy and surface-level sentiment. I arrived early this time, placed my gift beneath the tree without a word. Plain white box, no ribbon, no glitter, no tag, just wait. Madison was already there, wrapped in cream-colored cashmere, sipping eggnog like royalty. Robert stood by the fireplace, inspecting the mantel like he was managing inventory. Elaine floated in and out of the kitchen, humming Christmas songs off-key. Presents were opened, champagne flowed. Madison unwrapped a new designer bag and squealed on cue. Toasts were made to new beginnings and bright futures. Then it was my turn. I handed Robert the box. He opened it slowly, already smiling like he assumed it was socks, or worse, gratitude. Inside, an envelope sealed in wax. He broke the seal, pulled out the papers. At first, nothing changed. Then came the twitch, the tightening jaw, the whitened knuckles. He read the first page again, and again. Then Elaine leaned over, reading beside him. Her smile faltered, her breath caught. "What is this?" she asked, her voice too light to hide the tremor. I met her eyes. It's exactly what it looks like. The deed, the purchase, the legal notice, all in my name, not forged, real. They said nothing, because they couldn't. And that silence? That was the best gift I'd ever received. The silence didn't come all at once. It arrived slowly, like snow creeping under the doorframe. Robert sat frozen, still clutching the papers with both hands. His eyes moved back and forth across the text as if willing the words to change. As if, with enough focus, he could rewrite the truth he was finally being forced to see. Elaine stood beside him, no longer humming, no longer smiling. Her face, once trained in pageant-perfect expressions, was blank now, cleared of charm, drained of control. "What is this?" she asked again, quieter this time. But she already knew. Her voice cracked at the edges, not theatrically, not for show. It cracked the way old porcelain cracks, clean, devastating, final. Robert didn't answer. He couldn't. I didn't speak either. I didn't need to. The documents did all the talking. The notarized deed, the verified purchase under a separate entity, the legal warning attached by Jamie, and, most damning of all, a scanned copy of the forged signature, his version of my name, in his handwriting. Elaine backed a step away from him, like distance could buffer the betrayal. "You didn't tell me," she whispered. Still no answer. Across the room, Madison sat very still on the couch, holding her new designer handbag with both hands like it might anchor her to the room. She blinked rapidly, her mouth slightly open, but no sound came out. She looked from Robert to Elaine to me, searching for a script that no longer existed. Because here's the thing about families like ours. They rehearse. They assign roles. They expect the quiet ones to stay quiet. But this wasn't rehearsal. This was opening night. And I was the only one who showed up with the real script. I stood there for another beat, letting the silence grow dense and heavy, letting it press into every corner of that perfect cabin. The same cabin that once held nothing for me but polite rejection and sugar-coated insults. Now it held the truth. I smoothed the hem of my sweater and spoke, not loudly, not bitterly, but with a calm only earned through years of being dismissed. "I won't be sharing the lake house," I said. That was it. No speech, no justification, just a line drawn. Line. Robert's hands trembled slightly as he tried to fold the papers back into the envelope, but they wouldn't fold clean. The creases had already been made, too deep to hide. Elaine stared at the document in his lap like it was a foreign language. Her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling, not because of a scandal, but because of something worse. Evidence. Real, legal, undeniable. And Madison? Still silent. Still trying to make sense of a version of the world where I wasn't the afterthought, but the one holding the pen. That was the power of truth. It doesn't need volume, it only needs light. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I had it. Not handed to me, not borrowed, mine. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't turn back either. There was no final word, no dramatic exit, just the cold December air curling around my shoulders as I stepped out into the snow, my boots crunching against the porch steps. The sound was sharp, clean, like something ending exactly where it was meant to. Behind me, the cabin remained perfectly lit, perfectly decorated. A stage set left abandoned after the play had been called off. Inside, they were still holding the truth in their hands, not quite knowing what to do with it. And me? I was already gone. The drive to the lake house was quiet. No music, no GPS, just the road unwinding ahead of me like ribbon from a gift no one expected me to open. By the time I arrived, snow had begun to fall again, gentle, steady flakes drifting down from the black sky. The porch light flickered as I stepped inside. It smelled like cedar and dust. The place wasn't perfect. The floors creaked, the chimney still smoked. The thermostat clicked 3 times before doing anything useful. But it was mine. Not because they gave it to me, because they tried to hide it from me, and I took it anyway. I dropped my bag, slipped off my coat, and made a cup of coffee. It wasn't hot enough. The mug chipped slightly at the rim. I didn't care. I curled up in the armchair near the window, the one facing the water, and watched the snow blanket the dock, the trees, the corners of the frozen lake. And for the first time in years, I felt something I didn't recognize at first. It wasn't happiness, it wasn't triumph, it was space, room to breathe, room to exist without shrinking. I didn't feel the need to call anyone, didn't scroll my phone looking for proof of my worth, didn't imagine what Elaine would say when she finally found her voice again, or what Robert would pretend not to know. And Madison? She'd spin it into something poetic, I was sure. A betrayal, a misunderstanding. She'd cry over it on her podcast if she had to. But none of it mattered now. I wasn't waiting for apology, or explanation, or permission to feel what I already knew, that I had never been lesser, only underestimated. And that silence, when it's chosen, not forced, isn't weakness. It's power. Real, grounded power. I sat there for hours, watching the snow pile up in soft, forgiving mounds, letting the quiet soak into my skin like a balm. My body felt lighter, like it finally remembered what it was to be unobserved, unjudged, unclaimed. They may never reach out, or they might. Elaine might call with the kind of apology that tastes more like control. Robert might send a newspaper clipping and pretend nothing happened. Madison might text a meme, acting like we were still close. But I wouldn't reply. Because some stories don't need sequels. And some people, when they walk away, don't turn back. Not out of anger, but out of peace. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or forgiveness or anyone finally saying, "You were right." Sometimes the greatest victory is walking away with your name intact, your truth unshaken, and your silence chosen. Aubrey didn't take the lake house to prove a point. She took it to draw a line, not in anger, but in clarity. Because you can only play the forgotten role for so long, before you decide to write your own part. This story is for anyone who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or handed less because you always manage somehow. You don't owe them rage, you don't owe them your peace, but you do owe yourself this, a life that's yours, unedited, unapologetic, unclaimed by anyone else. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever left a room and never looked back, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the story that frees you is the one that finally says, "I'm not giving it back. Not the house, not my name, not anymore."